It's been 20 plus years and both sides have suffered loss within the culture wars. Talking with those on both sides of the battlefield, cultural diplomacy unites theology and culture in open, peaceful dialogue with the goal of reconstruction instead of destruction. Here are the show's hosts and founders of Ceasefire Strategies, Eric Bumpus and Tim Moranville. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Eric Bumpus.
And I'm your co-host, Tim Moranville. And this week we're joined by Dan Merchant to talk about his film, Lord Save Us From Your Followers. The film seeks to answer the question, why is the gospel of love dividing America, and has garnered attention from USA Today and The Today Show.
Dan Merchant is an Emmy Award-winning television writer/producer and is also a film screenwriter. He has recently optioned the screenplay You Make Me Sick, a teen comedy about a high schooler who fakes a terminal illness to improve his social standing. Dan's television credits include executive producer-writer of VH1's critically acclaimed rock and roll Twilight Zone anthology series, Strange Frequency, hosted by The Who's Roger Daltrey, Soccer Moms, a pilot script for CBS Warner Brothers, and with the regional Emmy-winning Bill Nye the Science Guy. Hey, Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys. It's great to be here.
It's really cool, I guess, that we're actually involved with the same mission. And in a way, you're sort of acting like a diplomat for two warring nations, so to speak, and have been so for the past 2 years of your life. So do you want to explain really what's led you to this journey, a little bit about what the film is about? What's this mission all about for you?
Well, first, let me say that after, it's been almost 3 years now of working on Lord Save Us, doing the film and writing the book. And it's been reassuring, let's say, to complete the projects and to kind of get them out in the public sphere and meet, guys like, you guys at Ceasefires and Gabe Lyons and Dave Kinnaman, who wrote the book on Christian, and to find so many other folks who are struggling with the same sorts of questions and issues and concerns that I had that prompted me to do the film and the book. So there's that moment when you release something, and we're still in pre-release on the movie, just doing kind of advanced test screenings and things like that. But there's this period where you're just not sure if you're the only one who feels this way. So it's a great relief to meet you guys and to be in just such a range of colleges and churches where I'm hearing from people that have been struggling with and dealing with all the same things. So it's been an interesting time, to be sure. To answer your question about sort of the start of this, about 4 years ago, the executive producer of the film, Jeff Martin, and the cinematographer, editor, Jim Standridge, and I all had occasion to visit Ethiopia as part of a special United Nations delegation led by UN ambassador on food and agriculture named Tony Hall. And so we had a chance to visit Ethiopia on the 20th anniversary of Tony Hall's initial visit, which he made as a congressman from Ohio way back when. And he has a powerful story about, the first day he was on the ground back then, he saw, 20 or 30 children, die. This is in the middle of the Great Famine, obviously, in 1984. And to be able to return 20 years later to see how the relief efforts are working, to see how the culture's changed, to see how all the money's being spent, all that. So it was quite extraordinary for us to be able to accompany him on that journey with our, with a film crew. And what was interesting was at the time we didn't realize that we were actually shooting the first frames of Lord Save Us From Your Followers. And we came back from Africa pretty moved by what we'd seen. The Christians from around the world making up the majority of those doing relief work, doing the really hard, difficult, beautiful work, and then also meeting Ethiopian Christians and hearing their testimony, and really being startled by how generous, how loving they were as people, and far beyond frankly my capacity for it, and shockingly. Based on the comforts of the West and the comforts of my life, I mean, they were so much more at peace and content than they should have been. You know, for people who have to go fetch water, or don't have running water, or houses get washed away in mudslides. All this kind of stuff that happens on a regular basis. To meet people who, frankly, the bottom line was who were content in their life because they believed God loved them. I'm lame enough where when the cable went out during the Davidson, Kansas game during the NCAA tournament, I'm raising a fist to the sky, going, "Lord, why have you forsaken me?" And and these guys are doing it the real way of actually trusting God's truth and love and grace and relying on it in a way that, frankly, we don't really have to in the West. So that gave that's a look in the mirror that you have to consider who you are and what you believe and why you believe it. And to come home from Ethiopia in the run up to the 04 election and the religious right and many who believe more or less what I believe it was the most strident, divisive, polarizing kind of rhetoric that I'd ever seen. And to compare the Christians I met overseas, and some of them were American Christians too, but to compare that experience with what I was seeing with the guys with the microphones, that's startling, and that really created some questions in me that I wanted answered. And obviously, when I thought about it a little bit and realized I was a whole bunch more like the guys with the microphones in the States than I was the guy living in the hut, basically that becomes the journey of Lord Save Us From Your Followers.
It's interesting how you put that with the guys with the microphones, because as I was watching this film, I tend to think, we spend so much effort overseas. There's people right here in America that don't even know what Christianity is or what it's about. And on the other side of it, too, you've got Christians that really don't know what the other side thinks. So it's like we get this perspective all from the media that I watched a YouTube clip today on Bumper Sticker Man Goes to College. And one of the girls responded, if I can remember correctly, I really wish that there were more Christians like this out there. It's nice that you're doing this. I appreciate it. And I thought, well, there are other Christians out there just like that, and doing the same kind of things, and that really do promote peace and love. And on the same token of it, when you meet a atheist who's lovable and kind and willing to actually have a dialogue with you, and Christians sit there and say, "I wish there were more atheists like you," and there are.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. What's fascinating is, and certainly one of the things I learned while traveling around America dressed up as a human bumper sticker in that bumper sticker suit, it was really fascinating that the guys with the microphones, and we know who they all have been in the past anyway. It's kind of changing now a little bit, thank goodness. But those fellows certainly were the most visible and bear a great responsibility for creating a perception of who Christians are, or who we've been in recent years anyway. And so it's fascinating. Whether when I traveled to Yale or to this Lewis and Clark College that you referred to this video where we screened the film there, it's really interesting that so many people were shocked at Lewis and Clark that I wasn't just like Pat Robertson. They were expecting some really nasty, divisive comments from me. They were expecting me to call them out as sinners and to have an altar call or something. I'm not sure what they expected, but it was something like that. And so when that wasn't what they got, when they got somebody who genuinely cared about them, I wanted to hear what their opinions were. I was happy to share my opinions, but it was much more of a dialogue than, an agenda where I was trying to get somebody converted by the end of the session or something. And people appreciate being respected. All of us are worthy of respect and deserve respect. And, that kind of communication has not been it has not been the predominant form, but you're absolutely right, and this is why I'm so encouraged after, this many years running around the country, either dressed up as a goofball in that bumper sticker man suit or sharing the movie or the book and talking to groups, talking to people, is that there are so many people who do believe, the Gospels in a way that Jesus might recognize, that are out there trying to give of themselves to others and live out the Gospels. And just because that's not the widest perception doesn't mean it's not true. It's just, we've done, all of us have done our part in creating a perception of Christ and Christianity that isn't what it should be. But there's an awful lot of people out there, just take a look at, in the wake of Hurricane Katrina or even Hurricane Ike, it's the faith-based community, mostly Christians, that are the ones that are there to help. You can go downtown in any inner city, and the majority, again, of the groups that are out there, running the soup kitchens or trying to find ways to serve the homeless or those in the, the most marginalized in need, mostly Christian. Now that stuff doesn't make it on the news because the white hat versus black hat stuff, the us versus them, it's a lot easier story to tell. It's a lot simpler. And, Falwell's a lot more entertaining than Rick Warren, in the old days. So, I think it's unfortunately, not to be too cynical about it, but it's just become entertainment. I mean, so much of television news has been reduced to entertainment or theater. I mean, anybody, Bill O'Reilly, very dramatic, very explosive, on topics that don't necessarily have to be, but they've figured out a way to make it pretty interesting television. It's very entertaining, and it's very energetic, but to confuse that with facts, to confuse that with how people really think and how they really are, and to oversimplify these issues because it makes for better theater, it's just that. It's just theater. And that was part of, with Lord Save Us From Your Followers, that's what I wanted to find out. Was I the only one who thought this stuff was kind of, exaggerated and oversimplified, or is that really how everybody feels about these issues? Is it really black and white? Is it really not more nuanced than that? And we can talk about any of the issues, and they've all been oversimplified. And so that's why it's been really exciting to kind of get out and talk to people, is that, people they do care deeply about these issues, and the vast majority of the people I've come in contact with, and across essentially every denomination, is that, these issues are important to them, and there's a wide range of experiences and inputs, and there's people who love Jesus and are trying the best way they can to follow him, and just because somebody slapped something on a bumper sticker or had an unfortunate soundbite on television or radio doesn't mean that's really how we all think.
You're listening to Dan Merchant on Cultural Diplomacy. We'll be back right after this.
I'd like to talk to you for a minute about Jesus. Have you taken him as your personal Lord and Savior? No? Then you're probably not in politics.
You're equally American if you're a Hebrew, a Jew, or a Christian, or a Muslim. You're equally American if you choose not to have faith.
Now, I know George Bush says Jesus Christ changed his heart. But believe me, Dick Cheney changed it back.
There are people out there, hundreds of thousands of them, probably millions of them, who are praying for Bill Maher. And he probably thinks that's icky. People really believe in God in this country. We're a God-fearing country.
Religion. It's a powerful healing force in a world torn apart by religion.
I mean, the funny thing about this is, I'm calling liberals godless. Oh, they're cool with that. Just don't attack the Jersey girls.
Well, isn't that special?
We form the moral majority. And we weren't intending to say that everyone else is of the immoral minority.
Here's something you ought to say first thing when you wake up in the morning. Here's something you ought to say just before you go to sleep at night. Here's something we always say on the third Wednesday in April after the first full moon in spring at 4 o'clock when the bells ring.
We are here to take a stand for our religious liberties and our religious freedoms. And they are under attack.
I'm telling you that that's the only righteous message for this evil nation that has gone the way of the Brokeback Mountain. God's wrath is upon this nation.
No one is to stone anyone until I blow this whistle. Do you understand?
No, I rather like this God fellow. It's very theatrical, you know. A pestilence here and a plague there. Omnipotence. Got to get me some of that.
Guys! How are we supposed to have a conversation when everybody's talking at once? What's happening here? Why is the gospel of love dividing America? Never mind. I'll find out for myself.
For more information, check out www.lordsaveusthemovie.com. You're listening to a conversation with Dan Merchant, right here on Cultural Diplomacy. Here are your hosts, Eric Bumpus and Tim Moranville. How do you get a message out that promotes peace and love that isn't going to get the ratings and obviously isn't going to get the media attention? Because if, you know, the ones who can speak the loudest and the most anger-filled speech are going to have the most airtime. So, and I've seen many user comments of this film saying, why hasn't this film gotten more attention? Why, you know, haven't I heard about this before? And when was this made? And
right.
You know, it's that kind of thing that you just wonder, well, really, how do you get this message out there when we're not part of that media that gathers those ratings?
No, it's a great point. I mean, you know, even this last weekend, you know, Bill Maher's Religulous opened, you know, nationwide, and you know, you could say his film is the other side of the coin. He has a very, very one-sided, myopic, not as funny as I hoped it would be response. You know, where he's just like, hey, you know, people believe in religion, believe in magic. It's all stupid. It's all, you know, it's all fairy tales, and you know, it's like, okay, that's one take, Bill.
Yeah.
But that's one that, you know, Lionsgate paid a lot of money for and put out in the theater and spent a lot of money promoting, because, you know, it's, you know, from my point of view, okay, there's the black hat, but it's, you know, it's very dramatic. I read online the reviews of the movie, and out of a poll of, I don't know, a couple hundred people who had seen the film, you know, 47% gave it an A, 50% gave it an F.
Wow.
So there you go. You agreed with it, you liked it, you disagreed with it, you hated it. That was it. You know, so that sort of said everything you need to know about the movie. And it might be, you know, I think we're in this period of trying to slam the brakes on. You know, the train's been going down the track a certain way, where if you're not negative, if you're not strident, if you're not divisive, then you're not going to get a place at the table here. But you know, the people will catch on. It has been like that before, and I think it will be again. And I think we're definitely coming to the end of a period where the you know, the negativity, the us versus them, the I'm right, you're wrong. You know, after a little bit, you can just sit back and look at the scorecard and go, how's that been working for you all? Has that been a lot of fun? Does that work? Did that get you where you wanted? Did everything you want come to pass? It didn't, did it? Okay, let's try something else. So I think we're getting close to that.
Well, to play a little bit of devil's advocate then, you have a soundbite of Tony Campolo in the first, probably the first 15 minutes of the film, where he says that a movement can exist without God, but never without a devil. On your DVDs and on your website, you refer to Lord Save Us as a movement, which is about peace and love and having an open dialogue and ending the divisiveness. So what devil, in essence, are you fighting?
Well, I think when Campolo said that, very nice. I think when Campolo said that, he's saying, here's the problem. You know, this is the way we've been operating. We've been simplifying things to just find a devil and blame him. So he wasn't advocating that that's actually what you should be doing. That's what we have been doing. And that's human nature, you know.
Okay.
And so we're trying to elevate the game a little bit beyond just simply saying, you know, like, for example, you know, it'd be really easy just to go, oh, Bill Maher's a big jerk, and we should dismiss him. And I make the joke in the movie that, you know, he's a bitter, cynical, you know, pot-smoking know-it-all. Mm-hmm. And then what do I do next? I explain why he's exactly right in his comment when he says not very many Christians act like Christ.
Right.
So that's a gesture right there of going, well, look, if there's anybody I could pick out as a black hat, it would be the guy who made the movie that contradicts my movie.
Yeah.
That would just be really easy, and I could sit here and yell at you not to go see, whatever you do, don't go see Religulous. It'll corrupt your children and melt your brain. Don't do it, don't do it. It's like, hey, I think you should go see it. And figure out what makes you mad or what you like, and figure out what you would say if you had a chance to sit down with Bill Maher and have a conversation. I'd much rather see that than let's pick at a movie we haven't seen. So Campolo was talking about what we've been doing. You know, it's the Iraqis, it's the Iranians, it's Al Qaeda. It's it's really easy to point a finger at anybody else. And you know, we have to figure out as believers what Christ meant by love your enemy as ourselves. I'm not sure what he meant. I don't know that it meant preemptive strike, but I do know we need to figure out what it means. Yeah. And sometimes that means sacrificing our own comfort in order to have a conversation, in order to try and understand. And, there's a funny thing that happens. You learn from people that you don't agree with. You learn either what you believe or what they believe, or what you believe gets tested or challenged, and it gets, you get pushed a little bit further to go, wow, this really is important to me, and I'm going to understand why, these tenets are important. Or you're going to go, wow, if this tenet and that tenet are in the way, then I was missing the point anyway, So it's a challenge, and I'm all for getting dirty and having a conversation and figuring it out. And because I'm a follower of Christ, because I believe in God's truth, I think all these roads are going to lead back to Him eventually, and that there's nothing to be afraid of in talking to people who don't agree with you. Whether they believe a different faith or whether they don't believe anything at all, or they're a different denomination than you, or whatever. It's like, love one another is the new commandment that Christ gives at the Last Supper. He knew us better than we know ourselves. He didn't say when the disciples said, Lord, what should we emphasize? What's the most important of the commandments? He didn't say lying. He didn't say, hey, you guys can whip lying, you're going to change the world and it's going to be great. That's not what He said. He didn't say, hey, no murder, make sure you don't kill anybody, that'll be it, that's the secret. He gave them a whole new one, and it's not an accident. And the fact that we just seem to be able to blow right by that because it's really hard to do, that's not an appropriate excuse in my opinion. So, like I said, that's why would Lord save us from your followers, I think we're challenging believers to do something really difficult, and that's obey Christ.
So what kind of response have you had, or have you found people to have of Christians and Christianity in general while you were out doing your various interviews and such? So
you're asking how have Christians responded?
What were some of the non-Christian responses, I guess, toward Christianity?
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, I mean it was pretty basic stuff. It was a good portion felt like Christians were hypocrites or judgmental. They were just too busy defending a castle. That they were narrow-minded. We got a few people that would definitely say, oh well, they go to church, or they care about the poor, or they're charitable people. So it was mixed reviews, to be fair. It was probably 60-40. Negative to positive, something like that. Again, we're talking about people who were not Christians. Some people have good experiences with Christians, and many didn't. Most didn't. And it was, it's kind of what you'd expect. The whole hypocrite thing, and which reminds me of a funny John Mellencamp story where his grandfather asks John Mellencamp if he's going to church with the family, and Mellencamp says no, too many hypocrites. And so the grandfather says, oh, well, where are you off to then? And he says, oh, well, I'm going to go down to the bar. And the grandfather goes, oh, yeah, you won't find any hypocrites in there. So, that's the thing. I always find that fascinating, that's, the biggest criticism of Christians is that they're hypocrites. It's like, guess what? We're all hypocrites. We're all not living up to whatever it is we say we believe. And clearly Jesus puts the bar very, very high. So, we're going to fail every day. I mean, every day. Because it's putting other people on par with ourselves. That we don't do that well. No one does. And so I think, sticking our necks out there saying, that's what we're going to try and be about. Well, it better look like we're trying like crazy to be about that, or we should keep our mouths shut.
Wow.
So do you think then a lot of the reaction and perception is true? Do we have a PR problem as Christians, or are a lot of people just ignorant about what we believe and what we try to do?
Both are true. Both are true. Clearly the PR has been hideous, for a long time. It's been, simplified for political motives by some on our team to say, hey, we're just anti-gay or we're just anti-abortion, and those are the two things that Christ preached about the most. Must be anti-gay, anti-abortion, or else why would we be talking about it all the time? So that's fascinating. So there's been an awful lot of money raised by Christian organizations for political purposes and whatnot, on the strength of those two divisive issues. So that's the PR part that we're absolutely responsible for. The second part of your question is actually a really interesting point. We were at Lewis and Clark, for example, and we had about 300 kids, show up to the screening, and the vast majority, were non-Christian. I think there were a dozen Christian kids in the audience that night, and it was fascinating that there were so many of them that just believed, here's the worst soundbite I've heard from Pat Robertson, or here's the worst soundbite I heard from Jerry Falwell, and they've had a few gaps in their day, to be sure. But for those learned, seekers of truth and knowledge to otherwise think all Christians are the sum of the worst sound bites of a couple of leaders, boy, they're not trying very hard. They're not trying very hard to figure out who we are and what we believe and why we believe it. And I'm sure there's some deeper truths behind, why people are that quick to try and escape any sort of authority. And I'm sure, their own personal experiences of churches as a youth and whatnot have probably figured in as well. At the end of our film, Lord Save Us, there's a segment where we feature an organization called Bridgetown Ministries that does an event called Night Strike on Friday nights under the bridge in the Burnside Bridge in Old Town, Portland, Oregon. And they wash the feet of the homeless, among other things. And we've had, it's been reported to me that 80 plus kids from Lewis and Clark have come down and visited Bridgetown. And I found that fascinating. These are kids that don't go to church, don't like church. You could argue some of them were absolutely anti-Christian, and yet there was something about this demonstration of compassion and self-sacrifice and reaching out to those, discarded people in the greatest need that was really appealing to them and really attractive. And, I think it's a glimpse of, the truth that we're called to represent. And the fact that they recognized that when the words didn't really matter. We'd used up all the words, but when they saw that, they went, is that what that church is about? I don't really know about church, but I'm going to go investigate this a little bit because that seems real to me and I want to know more. So that's the other part of it. I think that when people are exposed to, the best, of the faith, the love and the compassion and the kindness that we're called to demonstrate, people respond to that. There's just, it's not like people say, forgiveness. Yeah, didn't they try that in the 60s and it just didn't work? That doesn't come up. That's, this stuff, grace, humility, another fine art we've lost, compassion and loving kindness actually works. It really, really works. And you don't have to agree with my faith or someone else's faith to feel its effects. And that's, to me, where it sort of reinforces that, well, wherever this comes from, it comes from God's truth. That's the wellspring of this. That's where the power is. I mean, that's why love is the only thing that can conquer and transform every other thing on the planet. There's just no other force. There's no dynamic that trumps everything else. And that's just not an accident. So, people can have all kinds of explanations why. I believe and follow the Judeo-Christian version of that because that's just what I think is true. But, boy, you can take a step back and go, well, here's this force acting on this force, and why does that one overcome? I don't know. What compels people to sacrifice themselves for others? It's not human goodness because there's no such thing. There's something else in it. And not to say that we don't see goodness all the time from people who aren't Christians, because we do. But I still say that they're on some level or some way tapping into this, truth with a capital T thing that I happen to call God.
You're listening to Dan Merchant on Cultural Diplomacy. We'll be back right after this.
If you're making an independent film, short or feature length, contact Runaway Pen Productions today. We have experience in writing, producing, directing, and editing short films with International Film Festival play and sales representation. We also have worked on feature films in various crew capacities. Visit us on the web at runawaypen.webs.com. That's runawaypen.webs.com. Runaway Pen Productions is independent digital filmmaking where story comes first.
Welcome to Daily Reflections for Movie Lovers. From Hollywood to the heart, finding nuggets of truth from the movies.
Charlie Bucket hopes to find a golden ticket and gain access to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, a 1971 movie classic. Only 5 golden tickets remain, and selfish, rude, and disobedient children have already found 4 of them. Well, Charlie does find the last ticket, and off he goes with his Grandpa Joe to visit a world of pure imagination. All children disobey Willie, but Charlie repents of his disobedience and wins the whole factory. You know, today we have the same option. God invites us into his wonderful kingdom if we would only repent. Wonka would have disqualified Charlie entirely, but he had mercy on him and allowed him to change his ways. God wants to give you his kingdom, and he wants to know whether he can trust you with it. Can he?
For more information, go to I'mAMovieLover.com. That's I'mAMovieLover.com.
You're listening to a conversation with Dan Merchant right here on Cultural Diplomacy. Here are your hosts, Eric Bumpus and Tim Moranville. Well, let me ask, how much of theology, at least with American Christianity, and I don't want to just say that it's evangelical Christianity, but overall American Christianity, how much of our theology do you believe is shaped by the fact we're Americans or American politics than by the Bible itself?
Oh, that's a great point. I think an awful lot of it is just the places where we put emphasis. There's no denying that the capitalist economic system that we operate under pushes around certain elements in our faith. The republic / democracy that we live under absolutely influences. I find it fascinating that we get all wrapped around the axle over certain political issues. And not to say that they aren't issues, but I mean I still feel like my faith supersedes my country. It has to. And so, I mean, I have this conversation with people where I'm like, okay, I understand that issue is important to you, prayer in school or, same-sex marriage or whatever the hottest one is for the given person, and say, okay, let's pretend that whatever you believe to be true gets voted against, that gay marriage becomes legal in every state, or you can't say Jesus in school, or whatever the worst-case scenario is. How does that change your faith? How does that change what Jesus calls you to do? Well, it doesn't. It can't. And, you look around the country, or look around the world, rather, and, you look at Christianity as burning across China like a wildfire. Well, that's a communist country. You explain that. It's because it's truth. That's why. And regardless of the sort of the circumstances of your station in life, your station around the world, whatever, the Christian faith is what it is. Jesus' gospel is what it is, and you can drop it into any context, and it shouldn't distort or change. So, and I'm guilty of it as anybody. That's why I know about it. That's why I can speak about it. Is that look, my comfort's more important than about anything else. I want my couch and my big screen to watch some NFL football on Sunday, and then after I've satisfied myself, then I might, try and figure out what else maybe I should be doing to think about somebody else today. But that's pretty far down the list, frankly. And that's kind of our culture. Certainly our the consumerism behind, the consumerism that makes our country run is a me first, feed my face, and certainly the advertising world that I know a little bit about, having spent some years in it, is all about here's what you don't have, here's why you're not good enough, here's why you need this to be complete and full and content and, all that kind of stuff, which is, of course, antithetical to the Christian faith where God loves you and knows the number of hairs on your head. You're good. That's all you need. Well, the people in Ethiopia understood that. The people in America don't. And we get caught up and we get distracted. And so I think where we live, is really a factor, in our faith. One of the funny comments that a pastor made the other day about Lord Save Us, the movie and the book, was saying that many Christians are being saved through Lord Save Us. Somebody had asked if somebody asked me if people were being converted, and the guy interrupted and answered for me. He says, "Oh, I'm seeing Christians all around me being saved by this," which I thought was very funny. But it's at the end of the day, I'm not trying to rewrite a gospel or rewrite the Gospels. It's simply, why don't we go read them again and see what they say? Because we don't seem to be following them very closely, and I wonder why.
Well, I think of the response one girl gave to the question, what is Christ known for? And her response was, I don't know how he was or why he was, but he was put up on that cross. And it really, that just hit me right across the face of how many people in America really don't know what we're about. And when we think of our missions efforts overseas...
Well, hold on one second. Let me stop you on that comment for a second.
Sure.
So that woman, that's a Jewish woman from Manhattan. So she was being politically correct and kind to me, saying, I'm not saying he wasn't the Son of God. I'm not saying he is the Son of God. I'm just saying I know he made this sacrifice. I know he was there. So it was less out of ignorance and more out of being gentle about being from a different faith. If you'll recall, when she was asked, name something Christians are known for, her answer was trying to get other people to be Christians is one answer I'm thinking of. So she's the one who had been, she's heard it a million times. It's like, look, I'm Jewish, okay? I don't buy, but that doesn't make your point invalid. I just wanted to make a point about Rosie there that was where she was coming from.
Well, I'm glad you did, because that's when you put it in the context of what's actually being stated, which, let me get off on a side question here real quick. I myself am a freelance editor, and I've always kind of wondered, as an editor, when we take people's quotes and chop them up and do what some are called Franken-edits, what is the justification in there for truth and lying? Are you actually lying when you take these quotes and chop them up and they get different meanings put into their context? So I'm actually glad you brought that up, because, when I first saw the quote, I was like, what are we doing in this country that people don't even know who Jesus is?
Well, and you know what? That's true, too. That's true, too. That I just, where that comment was coming from was a slightly different place, but that is the case. We do a crummy job of demonstrating, who Jesus is, and we don't do a good enough job, certainly of helping people, to see some of the good things. I'm not saying, we should be patting ourselves on the back. We shouldn't be. I'm saying that even more of us can be doing more. I come from a really good church that was very active in Katrina relief, and many people in the church gave money, to help support that effort, and many people went and volunteered and physically went down there. But I'll bet you it's less than 10% that actually went there and did that. Maybe it's 20%. Well, that means, there's 60, 70, 80% or whatever that didn't get out of the pew. They may have written a check, so, there's something. But you know what I'm saying? It's like there's, for all the good stuff and for as encouraged as I am to see so many good things, happening around the country, different, whether they're tutoring programs or inner city renewal programs, or there's all kinds of things that Christians are being involved in to help their neighbors. There's still hardly any of us doing anything. If there's really in the tens of millions or nearly 100 million, depending upon the different numbers you look at of people who identify as Christians, if there were 100 million Christians doing one thing every week for somebody else, there would be no question who we were and what we were about. The perception of who Christians are would become, hey, you're ever in a jam? Call a Christian. Because they won't judge you, they won't shout you down, they won't ask you how you got into this jam. They will love you and they will help you. That's what Christians are about. That'd be pretty cool if that was the perception of who we are. And, we're a long ways away from there. But the good news is, to lots and lots of people, that is who we are. That is what they've seen. For the people that have been helped and loved on and not judged and whatnot, those people know. But in terms of a general perception, we've got a long way to go.
Well, you think of the Larry Norman song from the 1970s, that they will know we are Christians by our love. And in essence, essentially what's happening is they are knowing that we are Christians by our hate.
Yeah. I was at a Amy Grant concert a few years ago. My wife and I enjoy her, and one of the few Christian artists I've actually paid money to go see. But She gave a little sermonette on that and literally said they'll know we are Christians, by our love. Instead, we've shown people that they'll know we're Christians because we can pick out their faults more completely and quicker than anyone else, and we can shout those faults from the rooftop. That's how they'll know we're Christians. And in lieu of her personal situation, I mean, I knew she was speaking from experience of some kind. And, and it was moving. It was really moving to me. And she basically preached the love one another, message. And that, it was really touching. And that was, when Jeff Martin, the executive producer, and I sat down and we were talking about doing the documentary film, there was a whole flood of in that first minute, there was a whole flash flood of, Bono and the Pope's Jubilee speech. And this little sermonette that Amy Grant gave from the stage, I don't know how many years ago, 6 years ago probably. Really, boy, it's like that. Every once in a while you come across a demonstration of grace and vulnerability and humility that is very Christ-like, and you go, wow, that looks right. That's who we're supposed to be. And, that kind of stuff is, I went out searching for it to see if it existed out there any place else besides these handful of sources. And, again, good news is it does.
When I asked this question, what are we doing right overseas that we're not doing right here? I sort of understand that your answer would probably be, well, we love there, but we don't love here. So then that, I guess, really then ultimately leads to the question, why is it so much easier for us to love people somewhere way over there than right here in our own backyard?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know how true that is anymore. I mean, there's certainly, I saw some amazing work being done in Africa, and I saw some amazing work being done in Biloxi, Mississippi, and New Orleans, and I saw some amazing work being done down the street in Portland, Oregon. So I saw Christians loving people kind of all over. So I think it's happening the same everywhere. The biggest distinction, the overseas part was they, the Ethiopian people that I met who were Christians just seemed to believe it better than we believe it. They believe it better than I believe it. And there was one kid, 18, 19 years old, who we were having a conversation about faith, and he said a beautiful thing about how since we both love Jesus, we're both brothers, even though we have different skin and speak in different tongues and live far away from each other. We're still brothers. And I thought, oh, well, that's really sweet. That's nice. Yeah, I get that. And I was a little condescending in my thought, I admit, but I thought, oh, isn't that cute? That's very nice. And then I said, well, tell me some more about this faith. And he kind of looked at me, and in retrospect, he was looking at me like, how do I explain to this goofball who's got 2 cars and anything he wants to eat on any given day, how do I explain faith to him? He doesn't have any clue. But he tried anyway. And what he said to me was, well, my mother, she died of AIDS, but she didn't die for me. And my father, he also died of AIDS, but he didn't die for me. But Jesus Christ, he died for me. And I was knocked over by this kid who said this to me, and I'm embarrassed to admit to you the spontaneous thought that escaped my brain was, wow, this kid sounds like he believes this stuff. That was the first thought that came out of my brain. Immediately followed, of course, by, hey, Dan, isn't that what you believe? And, but I didn't believe it like him. And to have that kind of trust that your parents were taken for some kind of reason you don't get, but it doesn't matter because God loves you and Jesus died for you and you're one of his children. That's all you need to know. Next problem? What else we got? I'm relying on God, and I'm living a life of faith. I'm on an actual faith walk. This is what it looks like. Boy, that melts your head right there. And I have a hard time doing it for some of the selfish reasons I mentioned before, my own comfort, my own, it's like, oh, I can believe in God and trust in God as long as God provides me with X, Y, and Z. Otherwise, I wonder what's wrong with God or what I've done wrong. And, that's pretty goofed up theology right there. But that's sort of the natural instinct based on how how I have come up in a Western, culture, the most affluent culture on the planet. And so that to me is the biggest difference between, overseas and here. And it's, it doesn't have as much to do with the love that we're pouring out. It's that, how much are we really understanding, God's love? Are we really trusting it? Are we really relying on it? Or am I relying on my 401k and I'm pretty shaken this week because it got wiped out last week? So guess what? There's yet another house built on the sand, and just about everything we can do except for surrender to the one we say we follow, is some version of putting our trust somewhere else, hedging our bets, if you will. So, I think that's the hard part. That's the hard part for me. That's the hard part for American Christians because, we're so distracted. There's so much other stuff in front of us. And until we get down on our knees and wash the feet of a homeless person, does all that other meaningless stuff fall away? And by meaningless stuff, I mean the stuff we spend probably 80 or 90% of our time pursuing or dealing with. So those are the big lessons that that we have to learn here in the West. And they're lessons I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn today. Like Philip Yancey's great quote that's featured at the beginning of the film. Nobody converted to Christianity because they lost the argument. That's pretty valuable. And if you think about that for a minute, I mean, I'd be hard pressed. I've never found somebody who went, oh, no, I out-argued this guy and he finally committed. It's like, really? Okay, well, good. You make the first one. It's got to be a revelation for a person, meeting Christ should not come out of a defeat because somebody beat you up too much. It should come out of understand some kind of understanding of what's actually being offered, which is, it's a gift we don't deserve. That's the most difficult thing for people to wrap their brains around because particularly in the West, we're in a performance-driven culture. If you work harder, you get rewarded more. If you do more good things than bad things, that's good enough. I mean, this is kind of the culture that we come out of. So just like the prodigal son couldn't wrap his brother couldn't wrap his brain around, hey, this guy went and squandered your fortune, Father, and he came back to you, and now he's in? Are you kidding? What kind of rules are these? Well, they're not intuitive rules. And so that's, you have to understand when you're talking to people who aren't of faith and you're trying to share good news and you're trying to demonstrate goodness, it's counterintuitive, so much of it, because we don't feel worthy of God's love because we're not worthy of it. But those aren't the rules he set up. He set up a whole different way, a whole different game. Jesus meets people where they're at. The great apostles, Paul and Peter, they're meeting people where they're at. And that's what we have to do. And I think that not unlike what you see in the film when the Lord Save His Crew went to Biloxi, and we visited with a guy named Terry Smith, who was the group of this and Mike Mercer, who run Compassion First. They were down there, working on homes, right? Well, Terry, trying to describe what was happening and why it was so extraordinary what was happening down there, was that he said I could have come down here to this East Biloxi neighborhood, which is literally on the wrong side of the train tracks, and gone door to door with free Bibles or handing out tracts or something, and people would not invite him in. People probably wouldn't even come to the door. A white guy knocking on doors in a black neighborhood, not in the Deep South. That's you're not going to get a lot of traction there. But what happens when they came to meet a need, when they came to show love to somebody by helping meet their need and trying to restore, what had been taken by the storm? They're there to shovel out the despicable, mud and the try and clean up the wreckage and, replace the roof. And so anyway, you see in the film this guy, Peter James, whose home is restored by, Amish people and Lutheran people and Southern Baptist people and, all Christian people, incidentally. But what he says is, I've never felt this kind of love before, and these are people that don't even know me. And what Terry said was, hey, we were in this house, for 35 days, and the question that comes in these kinds of situations is, why are you here? Why are you doing this for me? Why are you taking care of me like this? There's nothing in it for you. Why are you doing it? It's the same question Sheila Hamilton, the news director at Kink FM, asked when she was in Africa. Why are you people over here digging these wells? You can be home with your families. You're a doctor? You do this? Well, why are you here? It's because we love Jesus and we're trying to live out his gospels. Boy, you want to defend the truth? I think that's how you do it.
You're listening to Dan Merchant on Cultural Diplomacy. We'll be back right after this.
Okay, here's the deal. When it comes to family films, it never hurts to be a little silly, and the original Madagascar reveled in its silliness, which is what made it a good film. The sequel is out now, and it's just as silly, and that's still a good thing. The movie follows the animals from the Central Park Zoo as they try to fly home from Madagascar, but their plane crashes in Africa, which reunites Alex the lion with his family and forces him to prove himself worthy of being the son of a king. While not as snappy as the first film, Madagascar Back to Africa is still a great treat for the family. The plot stumbles in the middle, trying to find focus for all the characters, but things come together again in the end. And the lulls are saved by Sacha Baron Cohen as King Julian, and of course the renegade penguins. Madagascar Back to Africa gets 3 stars out of 5. This is Kevin Carr, and that's the way I see it.
Hey, look, I don't need any help making Jesus look bad, but I still end up answering for all these guys, like the ones who said Hurricane Katrina was an act of God upon the sin-loving gamblers and gays on the Gulf Coast. I went down to Biloxi, Mississippi in the aftermath of Katrina to find evidence of God's wrath.
You know, they need to go back and check, because when the rain comes, it rains on the just and the unjust. And this was an act of nature that was devastating.
If there was a God-given purpose for a storm as such, it was to wake up the Christian community. And I see a far higher purpose in that than punishing a community because of certain sinfulness. And
people care about each other, and that they're willing to give part of themselves, reach out to help other people, and ultimately that's what it's all about. Is helping your fellow man.
The good Lord has come and shown people how you're supposed to help people. Not exactly, the politics part, but how God works, and to coming in and helping and wanting everybody to help each other. And that's what we're supposed to do, help each other.
It's such a miracle to me to see how people that I didn't know, who didn't know us, came and still coming and giving of themselves so freely. That is truly love in action.
For more information, check out www.lordsaveusthemovie.com.
Save me from me.
You're listening to a conversation with Dan Merchant, right here on Cultural Diplomacy. Here are your hosts, Eric Bumpus and Tim Moranville. I think of Ecclesiastes that there is a time and a season for everything. I want to try to understand this because I know that this has been kind of a thought from some Christians towards the film. I guess I don't think you're basically stating that we need to just kind of just be silent on a lot of these issues and no longer talk about them. But I guess the message that, it's just, let's just love each other and kind of this 1970s I love you, man.
No, I know what you're saying, and here's one of the things I said. When Christ says love one another, he's not saying let's all hold hands, sing We Are the World, and have a Coke and a smile. That's not what he's saying. What he is saying is find a way to be patient when we don't want to be patient. Find a way to be kind when we don't want to be kind. It sort of doesn't matter any other time except for then. It's very easy to be nice to nice people. Let's try and be nice to the people that hack us off. Let's try and be nice to the mean people. Well, how does that work? Well, that's the intersection he's talking about. And so I'm not saying, for example, what's the hardest topic? Abortion, let's say. I'm not saying, okay, go home, be quiet, don't talk about abortion. But, we've simplified that issue dramatically. To just say the solution is let's shut down abortion clinics. That's not a solution, guys. Michael Reagan in the film has a really fascinating commentary that you might recall where he lays out a handful of numbers, and as best I can remember him is something like, 43 is the number of Protestants, a percentage of Protestants who have abortions. 24 is the number of Catholics that have abortions, and 14% is the number of evangelical Christians, self-identified evangelicals who have abortions. The number figures out to something, was that 71% or something. So 7 out of 10 people, women, having abortions, claim to be Christian. So 7 out of 10 having abortions are our daughters, our wives, our girlfriends, whatever. So boy, doesn't it feel like the easy solution is to go yell at the doctors who are meeting a public, who are meeting a marketplace need? Seems like there might be another way to go after this problem. And it probably does include, education. And there's so many people that jump up and down and scream and say abstinence is the only possible way. That's just not, history proves it's just not a realistic solution. Ask Sarah Palin. It's not a realistic solution. But in those places, we have to be loving one another. And we have to love that woman after she decides to have an abortion and comes out of the clinic and is heartbroken by that. We better find a way to love her. If we think this person has just committed an abhorrent act, then particularly that's the time we should love them. So that's what I'm talking about, and I think that's what Jesus meant when he said love one another. It's like people are going to try and throw you off. They're going to try and buck you off. I will give you every reason in the world to not love me. Trust me, I will. But as Christians, we don't get that option. We're told to. And if we're obedient to Jesus and this commandment to love one another, to love God and love one another, and love God is, trying to understand what he has for us and, follow the life that he's laid out for us, and to take that to other people. That's the whole deal. People are inconvenient because we're jerks and we're selfish and we do what we want and we'll hurt you. And sometimes we'll hurt you on purpose. And you still can't be thrown off. There's the rub. And you can look at, again, taking the abortion issue, for example, and, for 35 years or so since the Roe v. Wade, ruling and the founding of the moral majority, we've been trying to legislate God's will, if you will. And how's that working for everybody? Not so good, Now, what's fascinating is that in the last 3 years or so, the abortion figures they're dropping, they're going down. It's not going to work by we can picket and protest and try and manipulate to get the right kinds of judges in office and do all of the stuff that people have been trying to do and having it not work, or we can figure out what are we doing wrong in our own families? What are we doing wrong in our own homes? Where have we mistreated a loved one and paid for her abortion, or forced someone into one, or allowed someone to have one? How many of us have opened our homes to adopt, a young black infant? How many of us have done that? In the 60s, pre Roe versus Wade, the number one killer of black women was, illegal, abortion attempts. There was a time where the only way that was legal was if there was internal bleeding, if there was a hemorrhaging, where you could go to the emergency room and it was the mother's life is at risk kind of thing. And that's where, believe it or not, the whole coat hanger thing came from. They weren't actually trying to abort their own fetus. They were trying to cause enough damage to show bleeding, so that then they could get the proper medical care, because that was the only way it was possible. To find story after story after story of young black women who bled out in hotel rooms in the 60s, bled to death because they, punctured the wall of their uterus while they were doing this. So they got more blood than they wanted, and they bled out and died. Okay, something's wrong. And it's not just because there's too many abortion doctors. That's not the solution to that problem that was just described. It's very complicated. There's patriarchal issues. There's lack of education. There's lack of hope. You could argue that it's wrapped into poverty issues as well. I mean, it's very complicated. So I think that we have to be careful as Christians who say we are for the sanctity of life. Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're about. But we have to figure out, a holistic way to implement that. And just saying you're bad or abortion is something we have to stamp out. Okay, let's look at a holistic approach to do that. And at that point, we're gonna be able to love other options into existence. We're going to be able to love other choices for people into existence. That for whatever reason, those people making those difficult decisions, and I think in most cases, I know of a few where it's been tossed off in a kind of cavalier fashion, but I think in most cases that's a pretty difficult decision for people. I don't know if have you guys seen the film Lake of Fire?
I've heard about it. I have not had the chance to see it.
Boy, you should go rent it and strap yourself down for 2.5 hours. but the closing 15 minutes of the film are really moving because it's it's an argument for both sides. I mean, it's a difficult thing. Smarter people than me have said, that's an issue, and I'm using this as a sort of a symbolic issue of how nuanced and complicated things are. But Alan Dershowitz said, what do you do with an issue where both sides are right? Mm-hmm. On one side, of course, sanctity of life is important. It's the thing, and it's a baby. You just can't have an argument that it's a fetus. It's not really a person. It's not a person before this or that. It's like nobody really knows where the line is. So in that case, don't you err on the side of it's a living thing, so you don't kill it. Period. On the other side, oh my gosh, the state gets to decide for you? I don't think that's the place we want to live either. So it's really fascinating. Both sides are right. So then it requires going another level or 2 or 3 or 5 deeper to get to the heart of it. But anyway, I brought the Lake of Fire film up because at the end of the movie, you take a woman who is pregnant. She had a child once, I believe, I'm remembering this right, that she gave up for adoption. She has this on-again, off-again boyfriend. She's an absolute candidate for, she's not, she can't hold a job. She might have had drug issues as well. I can't remember. But anyway, you look at her and you just go, wow, okay, that looks like a candidate for somebody who's not a suitable mother, and the genetic gene pool doesn't look too deep, and the whole thing looks pretty difficult. If ever there was a case for an abortion, it's this. And we follow her for 15 minutes through her getting an abortion. And they take her in afterwards, and they have the conversation, sort of the exit interview. Here's a woman who made a choice. She wanted to make an abortion. There's every rational reason in the world why it was the right thing to do, based on the rules of the world anyway. You sit there and you start talking to her, and she just comes apart at the seams. She is heartbroken. She is devastated because she knows what she's done. And no matter what the words say about why this is the right thing and it's your choice and it's this and it's that and it's the other thing, she's devastated. So, I think everybody should look at that and take what you will from it, decide what you will, but it absolutely exemplifies how complicated the issue is. And you know what? If Christians are going to stand outside of those clinics, I pray to God they're standing out there to hug that woman and take her home and be her friend when that is over. If that's where she goes, we got to be there. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. And, to simplify any of these things, to a bumper sticker like we've done, or to simplify these things for purposes of political power or gain, that's sick and wrong. I mean, that is just evil. And that is flying in the face of the Gospels. And it's allowed many of us to be mollified, and it's allowed many of us to be hypnotized, and it's allowed many of us to go, yeah, well, that makes sense, despite the fact it's not at all what Jesus preached. And that's the thing that shocks me, and that's the reason that I'm so thrilled with the responses we're getting to Lord Save Us from all kinds of circles, is that people are like, oh my gosh, we've been sleepwalking.
I want to jump in real quick on the subject. You said something about being patient. And we as Christians need to be patient as we love people. I just sort of, as one who was raised in an evangelical family and converting to Catholicism, sort of have a view of both sides of the fence. I just wanted to ask, do you think sort of the eschatological view of the world ending in our lifetime that a lot of, especially evangelicals, have, do you think that sort of forces them into this sense of urgency that if we don't, get everyone to believe like we do now in the next, 7 days, they'll never believe and we'll have lost them forever and then we'll be damned because God says that we're responsible for their soul? Do you think that plays into a lot of the argumentative versus loving nature?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I think it's possible that sure does. I think it's a lot. It feels as much like an excuse for us to be the way we want to be. Also, I can't speak for anybody else. I've had it affirmed by lots of people, but I know my nature is I like to be right. And I like to tell you what's right. And if you're not smart enough to pick up on it, then be done with you. See ya. You're done. Next. And that's my nature. And that's the nature of lots of people I know. And so when I find, here's the other quote from the beginning of the movie, the Anne Lamott quote, where she says something to the effect of, you've created God in your own image when it turns out God hates all the same people you do.
Yeah.
You're listening to Dan Merchant on Cultural Diplomacy. We'll be back right after this.
Look out, Easter Bunny, you are not wanted in some places. As you may know, there is a movement in the USA to ban displays of so-called religious holidays in the public square. Went through this at Christmas time.
Jason Hoppen, who covers the city beat for the St. Paul Pioneer Press, broke the story after receiving a cryptic phone call.
Just saying chicks, bunnies, everybody's mad. So I started checking into it, and I found out that the city's human rights director had asked that they be removed because they might be offensive to non-Christians.
The bunnies?
Yeah.
Non-Christians would be offended by it? I am atheist. It can offend.
It's just the Easter Bunny. It's not a big deal. People are making a big stink about it. It's something small. Let it be. Let it go.
We were thinking, since you're in a town that's called St. Paul, maybe the safest thing would just be to rename the town, to something less religious.
You're right. We've got to do something about this.
So we enlisted our concierge to put her best calligraphy to parchment and draft a proclamation recommending that St. Paul change its name.
You'd go along with this, Ann, okay?
All right.
Whereas the citizens of St. Paul
should not be subjected to religious imagery in the public
square, such as Easter bunnies in the courthouse.
And whereas the municipality of St. Paul
is in fact named after St. Paul,
a major religious figure.
We, the undersigned, move that the city of St. Paul be renamed.
I was doing so well.
Be renamed. That the city of St. Paul be renamed
to be religious neutral and less offensive.
New Leningrad.
What do you think? Can you get behind New Leningrad?
I think I would just rather leave it St. Paul.
Great thought. I think we'll stick with St. Paul, though.
New Leningrad. I like the sound of that.
I think that's a terrible idea. I think this is the way it is, and it's been that way for a reason.
Look, I'm just throwing out an idea. I can't guarantee that New Leningrad. If you got a better idea.
I don't.
Is the idea Pig's Eye?
Yes, it is. Pig's Eye.
Pig's Eye was the original name? What was wrong with Pig's Eye? There's no way people are going to get offended by Pig's Eye.
I'm going to disagree.
Pig's Eye, that sounds kind of nasty.
So what of the fine people of St. Paul, Minnesota? Is it possible to have a city or a country where no citizen is ever offended? Probably not. But then how do you decide who it's okay to offend? What is the end game here? Now, the ACLU, for want of a scapegoat, has been putting the pinch on public expressions of religion, and now nobody's sure what's okay and what's not.
For more information, check out www.lordsaveusthemovie.com.
Save me from me.
You're listening to a conversation with Dan Merchant right here on Cultural Diplomacy. Here are your hosts, Eric Bumpus and Tim Moranville. It does seem like we are focused a lot on numbers of how many souls did you save today. I just thought of one of my favorite musicians back when I was in high school was part of... he's a Christian and he is a musician. I hate using the term Christian musician.
Right.
And he really was never part of that main core of the Christian recording label or recording industry. But Terry Scott Taylor, who founded several bands, Daniel Amos, Swirling Eddies, Lost Dogs, and I don't know what album it was, but the album was broken up with little bits and sketches in which he did a voice of like this televangelist pastor, Dr. Edward Daniel Taylor, and they had it was like the PBS pledge drives in which they had the Fruit O Ministry total board of how many souls how many souls won, how many souls hardenedly revoked by the gospel, which brings our grand total to negative 153 million. Man, we got negative fruit in the basket.
Yeah, that's funny.
So it does seem that we are focused a lot on the numbers and the totals, and not on the people themselves.
Well, I think I was going to say real quick. I just think there's an example here of us not really trusting God, of us not really relying on Him. He's telling us to love one another, and He's telling us to love our enemies as ourselves, and He's telling us to take care of the poor and the orphan and the widow, and find the most marginalized in society, those who've been outcast and forgotten, as He demonstrates repeatedly in the Gospels. If we're doing those things, He's going to use us. If we're doing those things and we're trusting that this stuff is true, it's going to matter. I mean, you just don't see Jesus going, hey, you better hurry up because, you're going to get hit by a bus, so you better convert today. Hey, Pilate, listen, you're making a mistake. You better kneel before me now. You just don't see Him doing that. Why? Why doesn't He? And again, I think it's people come to Him in the way that they come to Him. Our business is exposing Christ's love, the love of God, to people, and then it's out of our hands. That's how we're fishers of men. That's how we're, communicating love. That's how we're speaking truth, is by showing it, and by loving people, and not putting conditions on it. That I'm going to be your friend as long as you convert to Christianity before lunch is over, or else I'm going to go home depressed and wondering what was God's problem. We have, I don't know, I just look at my own motivations and know how easily I can turn, and that goes back to the Anne Lamott quote, I can turn my will to look like God's will. And I'm really good at deceiving myself, and, then I wonder why something doesn't work, why it's not working the right way. And, it's been fascinating with the book and the movie of Lord Save Us. It's like there's lots of different ways that this thing could go and be put out there in a certain way. Well, those are all my plans. Those aren't God's plans. God's got His own goofy way that He's using this movie in a way I never would have expected. I never expected the church to be willing to look in the mirror, and I never expected the church to be nearly this willing anyway to have this conversation and to be, to self-examine and to go, wow, what is important, and are we... we agree on all these things we say are important, and we're not really doing them. Why not? The fact I wouldn't have had the audacity to imagine that. I was invited to screen at a church in the Valley in Southern California near Los Angeles last weekend, and we had 500 people fill the sanctuary, packed it out, and they had an overflow room with another 100 people in there to screen the film. And the reaction was unbelievable and powerful, and the questions and the comments afterwards were just, so affirming and so startlingly fresh. And wow, we have to get back to what Jesus told us. Yeah. And why we're not doing it, I don't know. Why we don't know how we sound to others, I don't know. But we got to figure that out. And I wouldn't have had the audacity to suggest that that's what was going to happen to this film. That's where I thought maybe, hey, some groovy art houses and some cool people will go see it and go, yeah, man, that's what Jesus said. We got to do better. Yeah. Okay, maybe that. But, to be walking right into the mouth of the lion, so to speak, and to have that kind of a reaction, that's a God plan. His are bigger and better than mine. There's so many people that can't believe that a Southern Baptist church or an Assemblies of God church will welcome this film and we'll have a fantastic response and great conversation. The same film gets welcomed at Yale or Lewis and Clark, Reed College that we're going to, or this college tour I'm getting ready to launch on. We're going to Liberty University. I would not have expected that they would even allow us, let alone be open to the conversation that we're going to get to have. And there's people that would say, well, wait, the Christians and the non-Christians, the gays and the Catholics, what? They're all enjoying the movie. They're all watching the movie. They're all reading the book and talking about it. That doesn't make sense. I'm like, I know it doesn't make sense.
Well, then this is definitely very encouraging because at least when Tim and I set out to write our book, Ceasefire, the War is Over, and then subsequently then creating our ministry, Ceasefire Strategies, I remember going through high school and even through college, just this whole concept of Christians involved, and maybe it's just geared towards Hollywood now, I don't know. Maybe that's the new enemy we're focused on. Because all throughout that 8-10 years of my life, it was, this constant battle of, oh, no, you can't go be in movies, if you're going to be a Christian. So it's encouraging to see that if people are having the kind of reaction that they are to your film, that maybe there is kind of a the winds they are a changing kind of thing going on. I mean, we've talked a little bit about the culture wars before, which Bill O'Reilly in your movie defines the culture wars as a battle between secular humanists or secular progressives and the religious. Obviously, we believe there has been a culture war since we're calling a ceasefire. But do you think, for the most part, that there ever has been a real sense of a culture war or a real culture war that's been waged by actual citizens of America on religion or secularism?
I don't know. I mean, I think the word, culture war is a great example of sort of the hyperbole that gets thrown around for purposes of, manipulating people and or entertaining people. And to be able to, to cater to people who, if someone disagrees with my opinion about something, I like being able to demonize them and say, oh, I'm in a war against them. They've attacked me. It's like, oh, they disagreed with your opinion about something. It's America. Guess what? Lots of people are going to disagree with you about lots of things. So, I think it's a manipulative, sort of entertainment device, if nothing else. Now, that's not to say that there aren't people that disagree with me on things. And I don't buy culture war. I think we're in a pluralistic culture. There's a lot of people who believe a lot of different things, and there's a constitution that's the framework that holds our country together, and that's what the Founding Fathers agreed on. They didn't agree on which religion they were going to follow. In fact, they made a point of making it different than England, where they came from, where the Anglican Church was the official Church of England, so they didn't want that. This idea that we're a Christian nation, that's interesting language to me because, that's not what we are, and it's not how it was founded. There was, post-Constitution, America, the United States of America, is not a Christian nation by definition. Certainly there were, the Pilgrims at Plymouth Rock who were, religious people that were the first settlers here, but in the 100+ years between their landing and the Constitution being signed, there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of ground that gets covered in terms of deciding how this country's going to get set up. Then Christian nation in quotes, I can kind of understand because the majority of the country, for a good period of time identified as Christian. And you could certainly argue that the majority of, the laws that are set up in the land are consistent or had been consistent with Christian values. So people kind of as a nickname call it a Christian nation. And I understand that. Okay. And certainly that has been changing for a long time. It's been changing since World War II, where women went to work in factories and women were supposed to stay home and have kids. There's a lot of factors going on, and I think it's oversimplification and it's manipulation to say it's those anti-Christian few that are reshaping and they're taking the country away from us, and we need to reclaim America for Christ. I think that's manipulation of the highest order, and I think it's wrong. And again, like I said in the beginning, it doesn't change what the gospel is. It doesn't change how I'm supposed to love one another. It doesn't change how I'm supposed to do anything. So the fact that it gets hyped that the communists or the secularists or the whoever, pick your enemy of the week, is overrunning our culture, it's a lot of distraction, because it's still, regardless of whether I want to vote this way or that way, it doesn't change as a Christian what I'm called to do. As an American, vote however you want to vote. I'm not saying that. Vote how you want to vote. And I imagine your faith will inform your vote, just like my faith, informs my vote. Essentially, one of the things I've learned, and since founded in the Bible, is that, we're either motivated. We need to check our actions and check our motivations. And it's either fear or it's faith. You're either motivated by one or the other. You're either afraid of something and you're reacting, against that, or it's faith. You're moving toward something. You're moving toward this thing you believe in, this ideal. So which thing is it? And a culture war response is, to me, absolutely a fear reaction. You don't want this to happen, do you? You don't want the gays to be teaching your kids, do you? You don't want them to be married and next door, do you? I mean, that's all fear. That's all designed to generate fear. And when people are fearful, they're frozen. They hesitate. They paralyze. They forget for a second what they do believe. Now, if there's a faith reaction behind it, you're evaluating, not judging, but you're evaluating what what do I think the Gospels say about this? And there's just, never a hesitation about how we're supposed to behave on an interpersonal basis. To my mind, there's just no question about how we're called to be on an interpersonal basis. And then the fact that we live in America, we've got civic duties. We're called to respect our leaders. The Bible's very specific about that. We can vote for the ones we want in there, and if the ones I don't want are in there, I'm still called to pray for them, to pray for wisdom for them. So I don't know. I think this line, there's a quote in the film you might remember that a really great guy named Dean Merrill says that, what Uncle Sam says and what God says are two different things, and they're never going to align perfectly. So don't kill yourself trying to align them perfectly. Put that same effort into, assuming we all have a finite amount of effort, put that same effort into representing Christ, representing the gospel.
So if I can just kind of summarize, to put this all into just kind of a quick summation, really the biggest issue is just to love one another, which really sounds just so simplistic and kind of makes you wonder, is that it? So, I mean, is there specific things that we could do to achieve that? What kind of call to action would you recommend viewers of your film to take in achieving that? What should our application be?
Well, to jokingly put it in a war metaphor that our country is so comfortable and familiar with, I'm talking about hand-to-hand combat. I'm talking about loving one another every day with the people around you. God gives us opportunities, in my opinion. He gives us opportunities every day, every single day, to reflect His love to those around us. And it could be as simple as giving a kid, a ride to school with your kid. And instead of being annoyed how that mom just can't seem to get her kid to the bus stop on time, blah, 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 whatever. Give the kid a ride. See what else you can do to help that person out and make their life a little better. That's the stuff that we can do. I mean, traditionally, we and I have been, so quick to be outraged, so quick to judge, so quick. It's just so easy to point out what other people are doing wrong and why, thank goodness I'm not doing that. Then I'm not looking for the ways how I can help them. I'm not looking for the ways that I can share a little grace. We got to figure out how to replace pride with humility. If everybody, who heard this interview took 5 quiet moments and thought about what opportunities did I take advantage of where I was able to reflect God's love and behave in an outgoing, unselfish, loving way toward another person, and I was able to meet the need of somebody, take 5 more minutes and see if you can come up with the 100 opportunities you probably missed this week. It's kind of like, how you're walking along and you think you see something out of the corner of your eye and you turn real quick and then there's nothing there. That's an analogy to me for the opportunities that God gives us, every day. Give up your seat on the bus. Help somebody out with something little. Little acts of kindness and charity, but not even necessarily with the strangers. Think more about the people at work who completely hack you off. Think about the person on the sales force with you who took credit for something you did and how you've been seething and been dreaming about putting a screwdriver in their ear ever since. Think about the people that you don't like. Think about the people that bug you. And you take 5 minutes and figure out if there isn't something that if you got out of your own way that you could figure out a thing that, I could actually, as much as that person makes me mad, I bet you I could do one little thing and it would be meaningful to them. And you're not doing this stuff to get reward or to make them be nice to you or anything. You're doing it because you're being obedient to God, and you're doing it because you're supposed to. And if you call yourself a Christian or you're trying to figure out how to follow Christ, boy, I'd look at the hardest, darkest parts of your life and go, well, there's the easy opportunities. The brother that I haven't talked to in 3 years because he wronged me, I can't quite remember whose fault it is now. Pick up the phone and say, I'm sorry. There you go. Because that's simple, and it's really hard to do, or else we would be doing it.
So maybe we should be turning off the TVs and the radios instead of listening to the Rush Limbaughs and the Michael Moores. Go out and have a conversation with your brother or your family and your friends or your coworkers and your neighbors, and have dialogue with them instead of sitting and listening to, like I said, the Rush Limbaughs and the Michael Moores just battling it out.
Well, I think so. I mean, I know that's simple, but I mean, Jesus saying love one another is very simple. but it's very, very difficult to do. And again, I think there's, it's a fascinating tension. Why didn't he give me 10 how-to steps, to do this? Why are so many Christian authors and, pastors and whoever else trying to give me 5 easy steps to do this thing? It's not a self-help program, folks. It's a be obedient to God and show God you love Him by loving His people. There's your summation.
Right. What we want to do is we want to take a break for a song that sort of summarizes the premise of the film, entitled Come Home. Do you want to share anything with our listeners about the composer or kind of set the song up?
Yeah, the song Come Home, Sweet Child is written and performed by a guy named Sam Martin, who's a brand new EMI artist, and I think you can find him on iTunes right now, and I'm not sure what the next big plans are, but it's... I jokingly said I was not going to put an altar call at the end of a film called Lord Save Us from Your Followers. But if you listen close, that's exactly what this song is. This song is an invitation, and and to me it captures who God is to us, and it taps into this idea that we just need accept a gift that we don't deserve. And that's hard for some of us to do, but that doesn't mean it's not true, and it doesn't mean He's not there waiting there with an open hand, waiting for us to take His hand. It's an emotional song to me, and it's a song that really, when I see the faces of all the people I met, in the film, it is sort of the closing montage song, and you sort of get to see all the people that I made friends with and met along the way on this journey, and it makes me smile because I'm just so grateful to all the people along the way who were willing to talk to me, that were willing to have a conversation, that were willing to listen to me, and I was willing to listen to them. They were willing to share, what they thought about things with me. And, I don't mean the people that agreed with me. I mean the people that disagreed with me too, And it was just really cool. And ultimately, I think, as the song talks about is, there's this truth that we're trying to connect with, and flailing about at the most times, but it is a simple analogy of, well, just come home when you're ready. Just come home.
Sweet Child by Sam Martin. We'll return to Cultural Diplomacy right after this.
Okay, here's the deal. 2 years ago, James Bond got a reboot, and now Daniel Craig is giving us his sophomore effort in the new film Quantum of Solace. The biggest question people are asking is whether this lives up to Casino Royale. For the most part it does, although Casino Royale was so great that it was impossible to completely match. However, Quantum of Solace is a worthy successor, with plenty of explosive action and other Bond elements like a maniacal villain with an evil plan and some beautiful ladies for Bond to seduce. Craig continues to shine as the reinvented Bond, seeking revenge on the organization that killed his lover in the last film. It's definitely making me eager to see what's in store for his character in Bond 23. Quantum of Solace gets 4 stars out of 5. This is Kevin Carr, and that's the way I see it.
Welcome back to Cultural Diplomacy. We have just a few minutes left, so Dan, we just wanted to ask you, how can our listeners get involved with your movement? How can they find out more about your film?
Well, let's see. The book, Lord Save Us from Your Followers, same title, that comes with a comic book in the middle, by the way, a little added bonus feature for y'all. That's available in bookstores everywhere, Christian bookstores, as well as Borders and Barnes & Noble. You can find it on Amazon.com. You can also order it off our website, which is LordSaveUsTheMovie.com. So the book is being well received, and people are getting a lot out of it. And it's neat because it's sort of a much more in-depth experience compared to the movie. You get to know some of the characters and some of the people that you meet in the film. You get to know them in much more detail in the book, which is really fun, and people are enjoying, and it's fun too. It's been fun as somebody who I wrote the book after editing the second cut of the film, and I went back one more time and tweaked it some more. So I wrote it. I kind of took a break from the movie to relax and write a book. So that was sort of funny, and not much of a vacation, mind you. But it's neat that people who've read the book and not seen the movie, to hear them say all these nice things about the book, and it was really stirred up some good thought and was an emotional experience as well. And then have them say, oh yeah, and I guess there's a movie or something. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's wait till you see the movie, guys. It's a different thing to hear the voices and to see the faces, in a different way. But so that's the book is available everywhere. And if you do get it and you like it, somebody write a review on Amazon.com. There's a handful of them on there, and that's a place. Or people are blogging about it. Go ahead and blog about it. I mean, we're just trying to find a way to start the conversation any way possible.
And the book is also the same title, Lord Save Us from Your Followers, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
We will also list that. We have a store powered by Amazon.com as well. We'll go ahead and list that there as well.
Oh, great. Well, thank you. Then go to LordSaveUsTheMovie.com. You can order the film to come to your church. We're doing church screenings sort of as we finalize our theatrical release strategy and our DVD release strategy. That's something that's available. If you'd like me to come with the movie to do a question and answer and to talk, I love doing that, and it's been a real blessing. After you spend 9 months in a dark edit room with an editor, and you come out of the darkness, and you get a chance to talk to people and find that they're connecting with this journey that I went on with Lord Save Us. Boy, that's really it's really encouraging. You really feel like God is up to something, and I haven't completely gone off the reservation. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And so that's at LordSaveUsTheMovie.com. You can find out how to order that. Order us to come there. And then the last thing I guess I'd mention, go to LordSaveUsTheTour.com, and I'm just getting ready to embark on a 60-date college tour. So we're going to be traveling all around the country. There's a terrific musician named Scott Phillips, a wonderful author named Matthew Paul Turner, who has a new book called Churched coming out. It's a really funny memoir about growing up in the church, and it picks up the story when his family has switched denominations, and it's a very heartfelt examination from a believer on how we go to church, what we believe, what really is at the core of the going to church experience, and how it hits and misses the message of Christ. So it's a very funny book. So he'll be on the tour as well, and then myself, and most of the tour dates include a screening of the film Lord Save Us from Your Followers, the feature film, and we're just looking forward to going out and meeting everybody there and stirring up the conversation any way we can. I'm actually spending the whole day at a college tomorrow in the Northwest, and we'll be speaking in their chapel and sitting in on a couple of classes and talking, and then screening the film. And again, just the level of engagement people have with Lord Save Us is really, indicative that the timing is right to, figure out what we believe and why we believe it, and then start living it. Start doing it in a way that other people recognize. And heck, all those perception stuff that we've talked about might actually change, might actually turn around,
Well, we here at Ceasefire also want to recommend our listeners to check out the documentary Purple State of Mind by Craig Detweiler and John Marks, along with its companion book by Craig Detweiler. We're going to be talking more about Purple State after the elections have wrapped up. This is kind of another documentary that fits in with our mission as well as with Lord Save Us. And we want to thank you, Dan, for joining us. It's definitely been a pleasure.
Hey, well, thanks you guys. I appreciate the work you guys are doing, and best of luck moving forward.
Thank you. Well, we'll catch our listeners here next week, right here on Cultural Diplomacy. Take care, everyone.
Cultural Diplomacy is a production of Ceasefire Strategies, a ministry seeking to bridge the gap between Christians and culture. Visit us online at www.ceasefirestrategies.com. To discuss the show or learn more about today's guest, check out the CFS forums at www.ceasefirestrategies.net. Acte est fabula pladite. 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 www.ceasefirestrategies.net. Acte est